Welcome to Inks for Starters with Alexa Von Tobel. I'm Alexa, a serial entrepreneur myself and founder and managing partner of Inspired Capital, a venture firm that backs fearless founders who are solving some of the biggest challenges facing humanity. Now in our 6th season, we sit down each week with one of the best founders on the planet to hear their story of guts, inspiration, and drive. Let's dive right in. Hi, everybody. I'm your host, Alexa Von Tobel, and this week, I'm excited for you to meet Chris Hopper, the co-founder and CEO of Aurora Solar, the company creating the future of solar for all. Chris started Aurora in 2013 to put the power of data and technology into the hands of every solar professional to make solar adoption simple and predictable. The cloud-based platform uses data, automation, and AI to streamline workflows and grow the solar business faster. The company is valued at over $4 billion, and over 10 million solar projects around the globe have been designed with the platform. Prior to Aurora Solar, Chris co-founded the humanitarian organization Equinox, which develops sustainable technology solutions for rural communities, and helped launch Box, a startup that manufactures, distributes, and finances decentralized energy solutions for the developing world. He holds an MBA from Stanford Graduate School of Business and a master's degree in electrical and electronic engineering from Imperial College of London. And with that, let's welcome Chris. Chris, I'm so thrilled to have you. So let's start first things first. Let's go back to those early days in 2013, the early days of Aurora. How'd you start? Where did the idea come from? Tell us the story.
First of all, thank you for having me. Looking back to 2013, those were the early days. I guess we've been at this for a minute. My second decade of the climate journey. But the way we started is I met my co-founder at business school. And the two of us realized that we were very entrepreneurially minded. So that's how we bonded, became friends that way. And we talked about different problems that we might solve. And one idea that we hatched was actually based on a prior experience I had in off-grid electrification, where I did very small-scale solar projects in 2008, 9, 10. And those were mostly solar powered, right? So we took that idea and expanded it and said, okay, you don't have to go far off-grid for energy to be an issue. Even on-grid, it's an issue. At the time, we still looked at developing countries. So we did a small pilot project in Nairobi, Kenya, back in 2012. So we installed a 50 kilowatt system that's about 220 panels or so with a big battery bank as a backup. And did the whole project soup to nuts. So we found a customer that was a local school in Nairobi. We designed the system. We raised money to finance it. We shipped everything there. And then we flew down there to install it. In a nutshell, it was the quintessential solar success story, right? No more power cuts, which were quite common at the time. Saved money on their bill every month because they're now producing their own energy.
Yep.
And you have the nice panels on the roof. Then what happened is that other people started reaching out to us and said, hey, that's great. I heard about the system. I too have power cuts. I do spend a lot of my bill. I too have to run diesel generators. Would solar make sense for me? That's sort of what I think of as the central question of solar. Does it make sense for me or for a business or whatever it might be? And the truthful answer was, we don't know. It depends. Where is your home? Where's your business? What's the roof look like? What's the weather? How much do you spend on your utility bill? When do you consume energy? Are you planning any changes to that? And then there's all these design decisions, like how many panels, where do we fit them, and so forth. And we quickly realized that was the question we had to answer over and over again. And there was not a good way to answer that question and not a good way to have a data-driven way of answering that question. And we looked around in the market and couldn't really find a good way of doing that. And so we decided to start Aurora, what is now the leading software company in this space.
I'd love to talk a little bit about the journey of product market fit.
Mm-hmm.
How would you describe your journey of product market fit?
In a way, we were our first customers, right? We built this product for ourselves. We wanted to start the type of business that our customers today are in, right? The business of designing, selling, installing solar. And we just felt that pain point very acutely, right? And we're like, there must be a better way to do this. There has to be a better way of doing this if we were to, move to a future that's in large part powered by renewables, powered by solar, and in particular, powered by distributed rooftop solar. We need to find a better way of designing and scaling the deployment of these systems. And so, we had sort of that, not just the knowledge, but we felt the pain firsthand, which was a motivating factor. But then we combined it with, a vision, right? We imagined, dreamt of what the future would look like, what would be the ultimate product, that we would want to have. And then, we can combine that. We also talked to a lot of customers. So we picked up the proverbial phone book. We were Googling local installers. We said, hey, we're a bunch of students working on a problem that you have. Can we come by and talk to you about it? I mean, I'm a natural introvert, so it was not a comfortable thing for me, but I was surprised. We didn't get any no's on that. Sometimes like, oh, we can't right now, come back next week or something like that. But most people are actually really appreciative of folks who take an interest in the problems they have and in what they do, and are very welcoming and open. And so we had a lot of conversations with, prospective customers, and just understood what their pain points were. And, in the beginning, it felt like you're sort of running against a wall, because you're like, okay, I have something, I'm excited about it, I love what I built. And then you show it to them, and it's like, yes, that's great, but I need X, Y, and Z. And then you're like, oh, shoot. But fair enough, we'll learn something. Then you go back and you build X, Y, Z. And then you come back like, okay, look, we have now that and X, Y, Z. And they're like, that's great, but also, we need A, B, C. And we're like, oh, shoot. Okay, makes sense. And then we go back. And that was the loop, all right? And that took us about better part of a year, I would say, just going back, building, coming back. And every time it's sort of this no that you run into. But over time, the no's become less, right? They become fewer. And then you get your first yes, and then you get your second yes. And then at some point, there's more yeses than no's. And then that's how you realize you're on the right path, when the yeses start rolling in. But before, it's tough and it's nuanced, right? Because the no's feel very, absolute, feel like that wall that you just keep running into. But if you keep running in the right direction, turns out the walls start to give, and then you're off to the races.
I love that. That was very well said, Chris. I think that the no's turn to yeses, more yeses, and that's how you know you're building in the right direction.
Mm.
Today, 90% of the top residential solar companies across the United States use Aurora, which is incredible. And as you said, you're entering your second decade. Walk us through how they use your platform, and what does it look like today to be an Aurora customer?
I mean, the ultimate goal is to build what we like to think of the operating system of the solar industry. So to streamline the way solar gets designed, sold, and installed. And maybe start with why that's important. If you look at the cost of a typical US residential solar installation, more than half of that is soft costs, right? So if you spend, say, $30,000 on a solar install, what goes on your roof is only maybe $13,000, $14,000 worth of equipment, right? This is crazy. Half your dollars end up on your roof. The rest gets sort of used up in the process of, selling, designing, permitting, and all the other processes that revolve around that. And that's where we fit in. We said, okay, there must be a better way to get solar on your roof, and software is a great way to make data-driven decisions, scale and streamline processes. And so that's what our product offerings do. At the core is sort of the design functionality. So it helps solar professionals figure out how many panels fit on your roof, where on the roof they fit, based on that and the environment, how much energy they're going to produce, based on your utility rates and the way you finance the system, how much it's going to save you on your bill, what the economics are going to be of, the loan you might get or a cash purchase. And so that process, that's again, this sort of central process that happens over and over again for every homeowner that's goes solar, or even for every homeowner that's interested in going solar. You have to run through that process. And that's the core of our product. And then we have sales tools, so ways to present the benefits of solar to homeowners. We have a new product launching around streamlining permitting. So every solar install needs to get permitted. To get permitted, you need a set of engineering documents. And that's a manual process of piecing those together. But we say, hey, that should be automated. We can leverage the data we have already in our platform and automate that process that happens at the click of a button. And so that's the idea. It's sort of a comprehensive offering across the life cycle that chips away at all these small little cuts, all these small little inefficiencies that ultimately make solar much more expensive than it should be. Which, by the way, is the thing that excites me about this space, because if you turn that on its head, in the limit, solar today could be half the cost it is if we go 100% efficient. Now, we can't get there overnight, certainly, but we can chip away at it. And every time we chip away, solar becomes a little bit cheaper, generates more savings for one more person. And that's how you drive adoption ultimately. And that's why we do what we do.
I love that. Chris, there have been a number of federal efforts like the IRA that have accelerated more homeowners going solar.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going solar, by the way.
Awesome.
With the changing of the guard, what policies or regulations are you paying more attention to? And how do you sort of think about what you expect over the next few years?
Yeah, look, I mean, it depends on a little bit the segment you're in. Let me speak to US residential, which is sort of our core market. I don't think too much will change. The key thing to watch is the ITC, the investment tax credit, which was extended as part of the IRA, and that gives 30+% tax credit to folks who go solar, which is a material contribution to the economics. But that tax credit was there during the last Trump administration, so it survived that, probably will survive this too. There's a bunch of adders too that incentivize domestic manufacturing that are very much in line with the current, certainly thinking and rhetoric. And so the ITC, I would say, is the main one to watch, but I would say at low risk. The other area to look at is potentially tariffs. We saw that again during the last administration. But here, when we look at, it's more significant for maybe utility scale solar, where basically panels make up a larger part of the system cost. And then the question is, outside of that, what drives adoption over the long term? One key thing to watch is interest rates, especially long-term interest rates, because a lot of solar is a sizable purchase, right? Tens of thousands of dollars, which a lot of folks either have to or prefer to finance. And then the cheaper financing is, the more attractive it is to go solar, right? So that's an area to watch. But also the fundamental drivers, right? There's a few other ones. Utility rates, they've historically escalated, meaning grown around 3% year over year. But now with the AI boom and so forth, we have actually a lot of demand growth forecasted. And it's going to be hard to bring that commensurate supply online in the right time or the same time. And so that's going to likely put more pressure on utility rates and actually make those go up more. And then in relation to that, solar becomes attractive, because with solar, you pay a fixed price and you lock in most of the energy costs for the next 2 decades.
Chris, say more about the AI boom and how you think it'll impact solar.
One is, again, on the indirectly, right? AI boom led to a lot of capex, a lot of investment in large data centers. But beyond the dollar investment, these things don't just take dollars, they also take a lot of energy to run. And so that's what I just alluded to. It's going to put a lot more demand on the grid because, well, this is all additional demand. And for the first time in a few decades that we're forecasting such demand growth. At the same time, it actually takes a long time to bring certainly large-scale resources online, right? To build a new power plant, a nuclear power plant, or whatever it might be, a gas power plant, or even the larger solar plants take years. And then there's a permitting, and then there's the interconnection problem. So there's a backlog on how fast you get, even if you built it, how fast you get it installed or connected to the grid. So that just causes that mismatch between supply and demand, and that usually increases prices. So I think we're in for a further escalation or faster escalation of utility rates, which then creates demand for solar or makes solar more attractive. And then there's the other side. How can we apply AI to solar?
Yep.
And I think that's super interesting because there's a lot we can do there. We've actually been doing that for a couple of years. We started back in 2017, 18, I think. Part of our vision is to automate as much as we can of this process to, again, bring down those soft costs. And there's different ways of automating. So some optimization problems that we solve in the background, but you can also use AI, machine learning, and computer vision to automate more and more of the processes. For example, we have a feature product actually that automatically creates a roof model of your home. So you give it the address, it pulls in satellite data, aerial photography, LiDAR data, so the contours of the environment, and then it automatically creates a 3D model of the home. And then that gets fed to the other processes. So then we have another system that automatically designs a panel layout for you. And then we have obviously ways of simulating what that's going to do in terms of your energy production and savings ultimately. And so that's how you piece together a pipeline that can ultimately automate a lot of the previously manual processes and take out costs, and therefore, again, make solar more affordable. So super exciting what's happening in that field, and I'm excited for what we can do there.
There are so many things I want to ask you, but before we transition to talking more about you as a CEO and a leader, you've raised over $500 million. You've passed multi-billion-dollar valuations, and you've always stayed very humble. You even said after some very big moments that you feel like you're not on the top of Mount Everest, but on base camp because you just have so much more to do. And my question is, you're at 11 years into the business. If you rewind, what was the hardest moment in your mind that you had to get through to get to today?
There's a lot of hard moments along the way, right? There's a lot of, when people watch from the outside, you see the headlines, you see the progress, you see the achievements, but then on the inside, there's just a lot of uncertainty and hard work and setbacks and, and ups and downs with my story, but also with, I'm sure with most other stories. In the beginning, it was, I remember being difficult because what we did was not cool at the time. It was not mainstream. at the time, right? 2013, 14, 15, we were just in the wake of the last clean tech boom and bust of like 2008, 9, 10. And a lot of folks lost a lot of money betting on the wrong, say, solar panel manufacturers. And, the fact that this energy transition would happen was not obvious, or certainly it wasn't in the mainstream. And so it was very contrarian what we did. We said, no, this is something that's going to happen. We believe it's going to happen, but also fundamentally something worth doing. That climate made it very difficult to attract capital, though. So, we went out and we raised a little bit of money, like $1 million in the seed round, but nothing like the $20 million or sometimes even $100 million seed rounds of today.
Correct.
Very different, right? We pieced together from people who believed in us, friends and family, and then small seed investors and seed funds who saw us as, got to know us as people and believed in us. And then we bootstrapped, 5 years, the first 5 years of the company, we took that $1 million and we got a little bit of grant funding from the DOE, which we're very grateful for. But mostly we funded the company through revenue. So we built a product. That initial funding allowed us to build that product. And then, we sold it to one customer and we got some more money and then a couple more customers. Then we hired one more engineer. And then we built more product and we sold more customers and hired more engineers. And that was the loop that we did for 5 years. And, it wasn't a crazy growth rate, but it was a growth rate and it compounds. And at some point we had a, decently sized business with 50 people. And what's more, a product that the market loved, right? The market helped create and wanted and paid us for. And that's, in retrospect, easy to tell that story. But, when you're in it, it feels uncertain, right? And feels risky and it feels uncomfortable. And it's a lot of hard work doing that, day in and day out and week in and week out, and then doing that for years. So then, of course, 2018, we went on the venture route, and that's has its own benefits, right? Of the, the resources it gives you, and it allowed us to, play for the big prize here and for the long term. But yeah, before that, there were 5 years of just good old hard work, roll up the sleeves and show up and do good work and trust that good things will unfold.
And we'll be right back after a message from our sponsors. Chris, I want to transition to you. You grew up in Germany and you, in the rearview mirror, are a tremendous entrepreneur who has built literally one of the leading climate companies, period. If you go back to your childhood, I always like to ask, was there something that you almost draw a straight line to between a way that you were raised or something that happened in your childhood that you kind of attribute to helping you be a successful entrepreneur?
I'm almost reluctant to answer it because I don't want people to take away that's. I think the truth is that, if you just roll up your sleeves and do good hard work, and that's the foundation of everything. And, I have advantages. Other people have different advantages or backgrounds. Mine was, I grew up a very middle class in Germany, stable family, happy childhood, went to school every day and then played my friends and nothing extraordinary there. I think maybe two things that helped me. One is my parents started their own business. Nothing like today's venture-backed business. It was a bootstrapped sort of 30-year journey of just that loop that I mentioned, revenue, hiring, growing. But I saw it firsthand, right? And I grew up in a family, that's the world I knew. My parents didn't have a job. They had sort of their business. And I saw the pros that come with it. I saw the cons too, because becomes really hard to separate your life, for example, from that. And when times are tough, well, then you feel it on a personal level too. And there's no, switching jobs or in taking a break. So I saw both sides of it, but that's what I grew up around. And I'm sure that contributed to my journey. I always liked also the independence and the agency that comes with doing your own thing. I think that's kind of fun. The other thing is I always loved programming and engineering. My dad's an electrical engineer. Motor design is what he specializes in.
Yep.
For me, I loved, like many boys, computer games, and I always wanted to learn how to make them. And then, I found out to make them, you have to, write code, you program. And I kept bugging my dad until he took me to it's actually an adult evening class, like a further education evening class. Normally you have to be 18, but he convinced them to let me tag along if he went. And I learned how to program Turbo Pascal at the time. And I kept that up. And I would be one of those nerdy kids who would go to the library, check out programming books, and then go back home and just. For me, it was a way of being creative, right? I always like to say I'm not a great musician. I can't draw, paint, or anything like that. But engineering in the wider sense, and then programming away for me is always a way to express my creativity. I can think of something, even entrepreneurship too. I can think of something and then work to make that exist, which is just super exciting to me. So those would be probably the two things that, if I were to draw a connection with the foundations of me today.
It's incredible to me the number of times that a tremendous founder like yourself, parents are also entrepreneurs. I mean, it's just an incredible repeat message that we have been lucky to hear here.
But at some point, if you go back enough, like at some point,
There wasn't.
there wasn't the
That's right.
entrepreneur in the family. So that's why I said I'm like reluctant for people to listen and say, oh, so many of your guests have entrepreneur parents. I don't, therefore I can. I'm like, no, at some point it starts, and everyone has their own background, and that comes with, angles of like understanding and strengths and ways that I don't have. Right. And that's going to make that person successful in a way that I could not be successful. And maybe they won't start a climate solar software company, but there's so many other things that you just have to find your way.
I think that's right. And it's also literally the calling card of America that anybody can build something and start something. Entrepreneurship's changed a lot since you started your business. If you think about a piece of advice you'd give to somebody who's listening right now, who's starting a company, what would that be?
I would say two pieces. Follow your interests. It's really hard to forecast things and to plan, I've learned. The good and the bad, right? Like life will come at you from out of nowhere with some curveball or some bad news, but also the other way. It'll present opportunities that you just didn't know were there and can plan for. Like if we met 15 years ago, I could never have forecasted this, right? And so how did it happen? I think one is, again, I followed my interest. I did something that I was curious about. I talked to other people who were similar or just interesting, and were curious about the world. We found a problem that I was interested in, and I learned more. And I didn't talk too much about it, but actually the precursor was off-grid electrification, so very small-scale solar. So the problem was, how do we electrify the billion people worldwide without access to any sort of electricity, right? And I never would have thought that this would lead to building one of the largest climate tech software companies. That was just not a connection that was possible. But that was interesting to me. And then that led to the next thing, led to me going to business school, led to me meeting my co-founder, led to us talking about the new idea and then led to starting the solar installation business, led to realizing the pain point, led to the software, and then led to a 10-year journey with many other steps to it, right? Led to bootstrapping, led to then being able to venture fund. So that's just not plannable, but it was my interest that I followed. And then, put some trust in life and leave some room for serendipity, because then these opportunities present themselves if you follow that path, and then you'd be surprised. But if you're just interested in what you do and you do that with great people, you're already winning. And the rest is just upside from there. But I think you'd live a life that you enjoy and is worth living.
And like I love that. You also have to be open to serendipity. Okay, Chris, we're going to end with a quick fire round. I'm going to ask you a question.
Yeah.
What is a book that you read that had a material impact on the way you think?
There's actually, it's always hard to pick a book. One book I love is Siddhartha. It's one of my favorites. Other than that, I would say I love Jung. Carl Jung's writing has been one of some of the most mind-blowing stuff I've read. Just a totally different world and a different thinker. So that would be amongst my top choices.
I love that you're reminding me to pick that book back up. So thank you. I would love to get a sense of, what is one thing you wish you knew before you started Aurora?
I almost flipped that around. I'm glad I didn't know many things when I started Aurora, because I think ignorance to some degree is bliss. Within all that knowledge, you can find a million reasons why things won't work. And there's a lot of benefit to being, youthful and inexperienced too. It's drawbacks too, but I think that's underrated for someone, I think, embarking on an entrepreneurial journey. As long as you have confidence in that you'll figure it out, that's the most important part.
That's a very good reminder, Chris. I like that. What is a quote or a mantra that sort of just runs through your head all the time? Something you really believe in?
Jung again. It's a difficult one, but one I remind myself from time to time. That which we need the most will be found where we least want to look. It's a very uncomfortable truth, but most people, and myself included, live most of the time in their comfort zone, and that's the area you're in all the time anyway. You've been around, and if you haven't figured something out, well, it's probably not where you've looked already, and you have to go to the areas that are outside of that, and that's where real growth lies.
I love that. I think that's fabulous, Chris. Last question. what is one category of innovation that does not touch Aurora in any capacity that you're paying attention to, or that's adjacent, but that you're really fascinated by right now?
Nancy probably get from most people. It's hard to not be excited about AI. Now, it touches to some degree Aurora, but there's just many areas it doesn't. The other area would be probably space exploration, like the innovation we've seen the last decade or two is just absolutely incredible. It's sort of the stuff of science fiction. If you told us people 10, 20 years ago that we'd be catching skyscrapers falling from the sky, and it's just marvelous. And I think there's something very human about that. We're dreaming about the next frontier. I think it's gonna, beyond what it actually does, is how it works and so forth. I think that keeping that spirit alive and reigniting that spirit that we once had, I think is just inspiring.
I agree with you. I think at our core, humans are inquisitive. We want to look out to the world. That's a great place to end. Chris, first of all, thank you so much for joining us today. I am so grateful as a citizen of humanity for everything that you're doing with Aurora Solar, and I've followed you for a long time. Everybody out there, if you don't have solar panels, please get them. Check out aurorasolar.com. Chris, we are rooting for you in every way. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
And everybody out there, you can join us for a new episode of For Starters with Alex Von Tobel next week.